Hello and welcome to this week's Different League show, sponsored by Betfred. So the Premier League takes a rest for a bit as we have international matches coming up. Not too many Premier League games last weekend, but there were some very important ones, certainly at the bottom. Brighton absolutely fantastic against Newcastle. Newcastle terrible, and Fulham, of course, couldn't take advantage of that. And in terms of the FA Cup, with the greatest of respect to Southampton, Leicester will be absolutely delighted they've avoided Chelsea and Manchester City. Now, if only we could speak to someone who was a former Leicester captain, a Leicester legend, and someone who scored winning goals in a cup final to help them win a major trophy. Matt Elliott, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Glad to be here. You make my career sound so glamorous when you encapsulate it like that. Truth is something different, but cheers anyway.
It's all about perception, mate. I actually Wikipedia'd you last night because I'm thinking...
You forgot that we used to know each other.
Well, I'm thinking, when was it that we were at Charlton together? The 88-89 season. Can you believe that?
We have to state that publicly, yeah. It was a good few years ago. And I was shocked to find out today that you're coming up 50, Scott, because I always think of you as a young spring chicken, but you was only that year or two behind me, weren't you, in football terms?
Well, you're 52, so...
I am, yeah, OK, we were coming to that.
Yeah, the big 5-0 coming up. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
How are you? What are you up to now? I know you're doing a fair bit for Leicester, aren't you?
Yeah. Predominantly, I've done a whole variety of things since retiring. It's been quite entertaining one way or another. Some good, some not so good. Probably the highlight I was head coach of the national army team out in Bangkok in Thailand.
Wow.
What an experience that was. Via my connections with Leicester City, the then chairman, Convichai, who we all know tragic circumstances of what happened there. I was over there, and there happened to be a military coup at the time, and my chairman at the time, the commander-in-chief of the army, went on to be the Prime Minister of the country and still is to this day. That was quite interesting, but I was well looked after out there, that's for sure.
My goodness, there's a whole show.
Yeah, there is.
I think after the watershed, though.
Yeah, there is in that one. No, it's not how you might perceive it, but well, some of it is. No, I'm currently working with Leicester City predominantly. As I say, Leicester City have got their own in-house media platform, and that keeps me busy on and off, as well as working in the community with Leicester City again as well, and a bit of corporate stuff when times change.
Brilliant. Well, good times at the moment for Leicester, isn't it? And let's take a look at this week's big talking points, shall we? Because I know it was a fantastic result and performance, to be fair, against Manchester United in the Cup. How good were they? And are you now favourites with Chelsea playing Manchester City in the other semi-final?
Favourites, that's going a little bit too far possibly, but yeah, it was a wonderful performance, wasn't it? I mean, there are reasons why Man United underperformed, playing on the Thursday night against Milan, etc. Obviously, that's taxing, and a couple of players were rested effectively, more than a couple, in fact. But Leicester seized the opportunity, didn't they? They were full throttle for most of the game, and I had doubts whether they could sort of sustain that first half performance, because they were brave. They gambled a little bit. They went to close down Man United, and if they got bypassed, they could have been in a spot of bother on a few occasions, but it worked really well to their advantage. They got the goal out of it, the opener. And then when Man United scored the equaliser, Greenwood finishing well, you thought there was a sense of sort of, here we go, possibly, and Man United going to take over. I didn't think Leicester could sustain that energy second half, but they did. And they did it in spades, didn't they? Probably quite conceivably, strange as it sounds, run out winners by a bigger margin. But 3-1 would do. That would do, wouldn't it, against Man United?
Don't need goal difference in the Cup, do you?
No, exactly. I don't think there were too many complaints from Solskjaer or anyone from Man United's point of view, really. I think it was the right result.
It was said tongue-in-cheek about the favourites, but you got the chance of winning the Cup and finishing second as well. How big an achievement would that be?
It's massive, really. I mean, it's probably a little bit simplistic to say that, but when you look at the teams that Leicester are competing and at this moment in time ahead of, it's incredible, really. Leicester have got money, but not to the extent of most of those traditionally huge teams, and and also I don't think they get probably enough recognition. I'm obviously a little bit biased, but I keep a close eye on Leicester's happenings, but they've been consistently there or thereabouts in that top region of the league, especially over the last couple of seasons. And that takes some doing. It's not just they're having a good run, as we've seen other teams do this year and fallen away. Although I know you're probably going to remind me of last season, Mark, right at the end. But the signs are that that's probably not going to happen again without tempting fate. But Brendan Rodgers has been superb in sort of marshalling everything from the top.
He's done great, and obviously he had a great weekend, Brendan. Ollie, not so, as Matt alluded to there. Some controversial changes, which, if you're going to do it, you simply have to win. Mikel Arteta did it the week before. Has he piled so much pressure on himself needlessly? Does he need to win the Europa League now?
Does he need to win? Well, I felt like he's needed to do more for a while, and he hasn't. They've stuck by him. So I think he's got faith that this is a real long-term project, and winning the FA Cup ultimately isn't going to determine whether he stays as Manchester United manager, and probably the Europa League won't determine whether.
You don't think?
I don't think. I don't think he thinks that anyway. And he's maybe been told it's a longer term thing. I mean, I feel like a Manchester United manager at some stage pretty soon has to win trophies. Can't get knocked out of the Champions League as early as they did, and needs to be sort of up there. It didn't make sense to me to rest the amount of players that he did, because the international break was coming up. So you were only resting the players for them to then be fit for their international games. I could understand it if they had a big game in the midweek, and it's then difficult, isn't it, to go back to back to back. But Bruno Fernandes had played in sort of what you'd term easier games when there were opportunities to rest him. So to have not played him was a mistake. But at the same time, Leicester, I thought battered them really. Completely outcoached them, and that is, I think, a concern. Manchester United are handicapping themselves because they've got a manager that's not as good as the other top teams up there have got, and so that's just the way it is, and that's the way it'll be until they make a change.
Until they change, you could include Leicester in that as well. I think Brendan is a fantastic manager. Yeah. We'll quickly touch on the Premier League, because it was a big weekend at the bottom. Fulham lost. Brighton believer over there, he's already said it, as a fantastic performance and result as well. What about Newcastle? And who is going to go down along with Sheffield United and West Brom for you?
Oh, you've nailed them on, have you? Those two?
Well,
they'll be pleased to hear that, won't they?
Have you not?
No, I'm with you on that one, yeah. But it's in my heart, I want, out of the three teams there, Brighton probably won't include themselves maybe in that relegation battle at the moment. Things can change quickly. A couple of defeats, you're only a couple of games away from a situation, aren't you? Really, and the impetus was with Fulham, although that's slowed down a little bit now. I suppose it's probably a little bit obvious to say, but you're looking at that last game of the season, aren't you? At Craven Cottage, I believe, isn't it?
I think it will go down to that.
With Newcastle, there's every likelihood that it's going to boil down to both teams needing something out of that game, probably, if that makes sense. But I think Brighton, most people, I'm with you on that, Mark, have felt they've got enough within the ranks. They just fall short. I mean, without going on about Leicester too much, but the Leicester game was quite a good example of that. They played exceptionally well first half, and then sort of capitulated, stopped playing. Rather than going for the throat, maybe getting the second or the third, as they did against Newcastle, they try and sit on that lead, and it just naturally invites pressure and something gives way. So maybe they're learning their lesson now, because they do play good football, and I fancy they'll be all right. In my head, I want Fulham. I want Fulham to stay up, really, partly because my dad was from there. That was pretty much as far as it goes, even though he's a Chelsea fan. But I think they've got more about them. I don't enjoy watching Newcastle as they are. And it's even got to the point where I've heard some Newcastle fans want them to go down so things can change around. So that's how dire it is. I'm not saying that's the common theme, but I'd like to see Fulham. Yeah.
Is that head as well as heart?
Yeah. I don't see a lot coming from Newcastle. No. The spirit is low, isn't it? And the ambition. At least Fulham give themselves they are loose, like they lose the ball in important areas, and they're quite open as a result of that in terms of conceding goals. But they've got a bit of enterprise about them, haven't they? And I wish them well.
I'm still thinking about someone from Fulham supporting Chelsea, but I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Good stuff.
I'm not quite sure how it worked. No wonder he moved to the suburbs. I was brought up in Epsom. He probably had to escape.
Look, let's talk about Spurs as well, and one person in particular, because Spurs got a good win at Villa after what was a terrible week, wasn't it? But the story now is about Gareth Bale, and he said it was always his plan to come to Spurs, get fit for the Euros, and then go back to Madrid. Now, not just as a Spurs fan, but as a top journalist as well yourself, Mark, how do you feel about that?
I think he's just being honest. I mean, I assumed that was the case, really. I mean, he needed...
Not even a hint of, well, there's a possibility of staying another year.
Yeah, but this is mainly to put pressure on Real Madrid because that $500,000 a year or whatever, $500,000 a week he earns.
That's you $500,000 a
year.
Yeah.
It's not. He's not going to pay itself if Real Madrid sort of kick him out. So
because he needs the money, doesn't he?
But he's signed a contract that enables him to earn that money. Real Madrid, willingly offered him that contract, and so it's up to Real Madrid to pay him out that contract. He's almost threatening them that he's coming back, and they don't want him back. So it's just him putting pressure on Real Madrid. I would be amazed if he was still there. I think if Jose Mourinho was still at Tottenham next season. If Jose Mourinho leaves Tottenham, then there's potential maybe for somebody else. But I'm not. He hasn't got the trust of Mourinho. That's for sure.
No. How do you see him coming back to the Premier League? Success or a disappointment? And what do you make of those comments as well?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. Obviously, contractually, it's an issue, isn't it? And I don't see anyone. I don't know what the actual deal is regarding paying his wages from Tottenham's point of view. You probably know more than...
I think Tottenham are paying most of them at the moment.
Most of it, what the percentages are. But they're not going to pay all of them, are they, to that sort of level? So it's obviously a factor in his mind, as it is with most players. I don't think he can be criticised too much for that. It's finding that balance, isn't it? But in terms of him, whether it's a success or not, I don't think you can deem it a success, can you really? Even though things are picking up for him a little bit with form and stats, etc., and goal return, but Tottenham haven't been setting the world alight, have they at all? And it's been a bit of a struggle for Spurs in general and Bale. We know enough not to believe everything you hear, but there's usually an element of truth in terms of maybe his attitude. Has the fire gone a little bit? Seems that way. Does seem that way. But when he spoke about getting away from the club environment, I'm not entirely sure whether he was just talking generally, maybe his time at Real Madrid more than Tottenham itself, to go into the international setup. But he seems more infused by playing for Wales than he does for whatever club he's associated with.
Yes, he definitely does. Look, on a very serious note as well, before we get to the game previews, former professional athletes across the sporting world spoke to MPs yesterday about the link between heading and dementia. Chris Sutton in particular, very passionate about his dad and controversial in many ways, saying Gordon Taylor, the chief exec of the PFA, has blood on his hands, and that after hundreds of players have died from dementia, while the FA and the PFA have just ignored and shunned the issue. It's an incredibly emotive subject here, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and probably for you guys sort of more than me, having done a lot more heading. It's not only in football. There's been.
Are you including Scott in that?
Well, he
did my heading for me
a little bit.
He was too worried about messing his hair up.
Yeah, I mean it's been in other sports as well, rugby union, NFL as well, where there've been these accusations really that the players, particularly from the past, not being looked after. I know in the US they've been pushing for a long time for kids not to head the ball, and that there's no real need for them to practice heading at a young age. I mean, I think it's the PFA should have done more. I think. I mean, not in the best position to say whether it's sort of blood on the hands, but certainly feel like they could have done more. Not only on this subject, actually, there's probably quite a few where I think they've let the players down.
Matt, as someone who's, I think it's fair to say, has headed the ball a few times, how do you feel about it? You know, do you feel that heading should be restricted in some way, either in game situations or in training? Should it be banned completely, as some people are saying? And do you worry for yourself in any way, for someone who just, you know, headed the ball, how many times in your career?
Yeah, I have sort of mixed emotions on it, really. My initial instinct is, you know, how can you ban or rule out heading from within the game? Because, you know, it's such a huge part of it, and probably without being able to have that capability, I might not have even had a career. And there's many other people who said that, you know.
Well, you were, I have to say, you were a ball-playing centre-back.
Well, thank you for that. I could play a little bit.
You could play a little bit. You might not have scored the winning goals in a cup final.
No, exactly, yeah. No, I make that claim about having ability. Most people don't believe me, but you back me up.
I believe, back in the day.
But I mean, you look at the statistics and the findings that the medical experts come up with, and, you know, how exact they are or not, I don't know. Maybe that's open to question itself. But the findings, you know, suggest that it is an issue, at least, and it needs investigating probably more and addressing without a doubt. I mean, is there a correlation? Is it certain types of players, like myself, who headed the ball regularly? All due respect to yourself, you would head the ball, but not repeatedly, consistently, would you? You know, it's likely to be less of an issue. You
would try and bring the ball down.
You would exactly had a bit of quality about you. But it literally was, at some stage in my career, I was encouraged to just, well, literally told by managers, head it and kick it. That's all I want you to do. And I was like, well, as you sort of intimated, I actually like to play football a little bit. They were like, no, head it and kick it, when I was playing lower leagues especially. But we also, even when I was in the Premier League, we had training sessions where we weren't clearing balls consistently well and just getting good contact on it. Now, it's just something that happens sometimes, you know, but it was happening repeatedly. So we did constant practices, just having it, the ball's launched 50, 60 yards, head it and kick it and squeeze. And it was that basic, even in the Premier League, on occasion. And I do remember a good few times, you catch one on the top of the head, it hurts. Obviously, I've caught some on the front of the face as well, unfortunately. But, you know, but when you get it right and you become good at it, you don't feel it, and you become a little bit battle-hardened to it. I suppose I head balls now in the odd testimonial game, and it absolutely, I was going to say kills, wrong terminology, sorry, but it really hurts.
Really?
Yeah, but that didn't used to hurt me 20 years ago. And so you wonder, you think, you know, you get hardened to it like boxers do in a ring when they're sparring. They don't feel punches, do they, after, you know, a certain amount of times. So it can't be doing you too much good. So I think the way forward is probably to limit it in terms of training. But at the same time, children, obviously they're developing physically, but they also need to practice it, because it is a little bit of an art in terms of timing and knowing when to challenge and when not, and how to protect yourself. And if you're not practicing that, and then you're thrown into a match situation, the ball goes up in the air, and you get all sorts of things wrong, it can be even more dangerous, can't it? But it's a tricky one. But I think training-wise, it's happened already with kids, isn't it? And I think it will be reduced in terms of repetitive practices, even at professional level, yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the international games, shall we? And the weekend international games are the ones we're looking at. Game Preview 1 is on Saturday. It's a World Cup qualifier. It seems a bit strange talking about World Cup qualifiers when the Euros, we haven't done that yet. But look, Republic of Ireland, they've got Serbia away Wednesday night, but it's Luxembourg at home on Saturday that we're previewing. And Mark, Stephen Kenny and Keith Andrews have had a lot of bad luck, haven't they? One with injuries, two with COVID dropouts. And they're also trying to implement a change of style as well. How do you feel all of it is coming together?
Not very well. You know, they've not scored in over a year now. it's not easy. It's not easy for a new manager to come in and try to change a philosophy when they've not. International management's not easy in that respect anyway, is it? Because you don't get the players, and they've had even less of them because of the COVID situation. So many players in and out. I think they would like to have probably promoted more younger players, and it hasn't really happened at the moment. But it looks like they're still taking these backward steps to get forward, and I'm not expecting great things from them in this World Cup campaign either, really.
Yeah, I suppose if you are going to try and change a style and a philosophy that's kind of been going on for a long, long time, it is going to take time and patience is needed. But look, if they get anything out of the Serbia game, that's certainly a positive. There's Portugal in this group too. So for this game against Luxembourg, ranked 98th in the world, they simply have to win this one, don't they?
Yeah, they've got to give themselves a chance in that game, haven't they? But you would expect, despite the problems that Mark's just mentioned there, you would expect them to get a positive result reasonably comfortably. I don't think Ireland are at that stage where they can be too complacent, that's for sure. But it's a difficult situation for the management team there at the moment, isn't it? Because, on the back of Martin O'Neill, and like you say, that there's been a little bit of a sort of ethos stroke mentality that's gone back for decades almost, really. And that needs to evolve at this stage, and easier said than done with the pool of players available.
Yeah, and not made easier as well with no Darren Randolph in goal, who's like a senior pro for them. The young Liverpool goalkeeper, Kelleher, he's injured as well. So the third choice, Mark Travers, 21, he's the Bournemouth reserve goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Will play. Hopefully he'll have done well by the time this comes out in the Serbia game. But it's not a position where you want inexperience, is it, in what is obviously a crucial week?
No, and probably in particular that position as well. As a goalkeeper, solid and reliable is what you want, isn't it? And that's a big test for the young lad, isn't it? But again, go back to the pool of players. It's funny how it goes in certain phases, isn't it? All those years ago, Jack Charlton, etc. You look back now, the quality of players they had, and Irish supporters probably expected things to develop from that. Maybe not always at that level, but it slipped away again, hasn't it? And it just comes around in sort of little bits of cycles. They just got to dig in, hang in there, and turn things around, because they have got some ability. And again, as Mark says, trying to introduce the young players is going to take a little while.
So what can you tell us about Luxembourg?
They're not as bad as, say, like San Marino, Andorra, those type of teams just don't seem to ever get any better. Whereas I think Luxembourg have improved. You mentioned sort of 90-odd in the world. It's maybe a little bit unfair because it wasn't that long ago they drew with France 0-0 in a game. It seems a big shame really for France not to beat them. But San Marino couldn't do that. I don't think so. And Andorra could do that. Dudelange did okay. Their club team did okay in the Europa League a couple of years ago, made it through to the group stage. So I think they're not the example you would use. Some people want a pre-qualifying round to get rid of all of the rubbish, if you like, before the big boys enter. I think they're probably an example of a team that were those sort of 9-0 whipping boys 20 years ago and are now got into a better state where they can at least be competitive even if they don't win games.
Okay, so what's your Betfred selection for this one then, Matt?
In terms of the actual... Who's going to win?
Yeah.
Ireland are going to win.
Well, anything else alongside that?
I've gone for Ireland to win by 3 goals, despite I didn't know until just now Mark stating they haven't scored for over a year.
They don't play Luxembourg every game.
No, exactly. It's now's the time, isn't it, to do it? So yeah, I've gone Ireland win. Sorry, you had to squeeze that out of me then, didn't you? By 3 goals over the 90 minutes.
Okay. A comfortable win there.
I'm going Ireland 1-0. Luxembourg haven't scored in 5 of their last 7 away qualifiers, so it should be a clean sheet, but who's going to score all the goals?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't think there'll be a lot of goals actually in this one. I do think Republic of Ireland will win. I hope they win, but I've gone for under 2.5. So, well, at least we've all gone for Republic of Ireland win on that one. Okay, let's move on now. It's a friendly on Saturday for Wales against Mexico. Mark, I mean, Wales had problems off the pitch, but Rob Page, you have to say, did very well when he took over, didn't he, back in November, or part-time basis, of course.
Yeah, I remember speaking ahead of those games and saying, well, it's not ideal for the manager not to be there, and we were looking to take them on, I think, in those games, and they did do well. I still don't think it's ideal, and I'll still be looking to take them on, I think, because, I mean, as Rob Page, and he's spoken very eloquently about it, like Ryan Giggs is the manager, he sort of leads their kind of ethos and where they want to go, and he's just a messenger really within that. And it's not ideal if Rob Page says he has like a 5-minute conversation with Giggs at the end of training, and then that is then relayed back to the players. So that's not the only issue, because on the pitch, Ben Davies and Aaron Ramsey are both out, and they're two of the more senior players. So not ideal on and off the pitch.
Matt, they play Belgium first and the Czech Republic last. This is a friendly. Do you actually think it'd be a strong team put out, and maybe a good chance for Chris Gunter to get his 100th cap, which would be a fantastic achievement?
Yeah, he's in the squad, so you'd imagine that is the opportunity, isn't it? But it's a little bit of a non-event to a degree, really, isn't it? In all honesty, with those two huge games they are, aren't they? Either side of the friendly against Mexico. That can't have happened too often, that fixture, as it come around. But sort of captures the imagination, doesn't it, a little bit, and brings back memories of just talking about Mexico. And we were speaking before about what personnel do they have, and I'm going back to Hugo Sanchez.
Yeah, he's retired now.
He could probably still get a game. It wasn't bad, was it?
I mean, look, in terms of Wales, there's no Ramsey, there's no Davis. Gareth Bale probably won't play in this one. Kiefer Moore is someone who, again, he might not play as well. He's done well when he stepped up. He's the type of striker that international defenders would be really scared of.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'd have loved playing against him. How do you see him on the international front?
Yeah, he's sort of hard-working, physical, isn't he? Hustling and bustling, and a bit of a handful, as they used to say back in the day. But I'm sure, I don't know, the Mexican defenders, traditionally don't mind a little bit of rough and tumble and a little bit of skullduggery, do they? But they're probably not used to the sort of physicality that Kiefer Moore can bring. But that would be interesting. I actually thought that when we were proposed about what bets to put, I instantly think of sort of volatility from Mexico, and I'm thinking maybe it might be a friendly. There still could be a couple of red cards.
Yeah. No such thing as a friendly against the Mexicans.
No, exactly. But I thought, well, we can't seem to be sort of encouraging red cards and violence on the pitch, can we? So I went for a high-scoring draw, like both teams to score.
Okay.
In a draw, and it could be. It's going to be a little bit of a not carnival atmosphere, but there's going to be a relaxed atmosphere, and people can go and express themselves, can't they? It's a little bit of a pressure-off situation.
Tension won't be there. No,
not really, is there?
Before we get yours, what kind of a Mexican side are we expecting?
They've named a strong squad. Raul Jimenez, of course, probably the most famous player on these shores, unavailable at the moment, and he's a loss to Wolves, he's a loss to Mexico. He's such a focal point to the attack, and I just like the way he brings other people into the game as well, and I think he makes everybody around him play better. They have still got some real big hitters. Hector Herrera plays for Atletico Madrid. Jesus Corona is in the quarterfinals of the Champions League with Porto. He was linked with Wolves quite recently as well. A winger. They
won't be in the semis
though. No, they won't be in the semis. Chelsea should beat them. Alvarez is a defender that plays for Ajax or can play as a holding midfielder, and Lozano is somebody in the last World Cup sort of lit up that World Cup before Mexico went out. If you remember, he absolutely gave the Germans a torrid time on the counter-attack, and I think that enabled him to get his move to Napoli. He's had quite a few injuries since he moved to Napoli, but a dangerous and a counter-attacking forward, and I certainly think Mexico can score, yeah.
Okay, so we've got Matt's Betfred selection, score draw. What's yours?
I'll just go for Mexico to win. I totally agree that Wales's attention could be elsewhere in the sort of this 10-day period.
Yeah, I hope Wales do really well against Belgium and the Czech Republic. I think it will be a second-string Welsh side. And Mexico, they don't mind a rumble, but they're normally very technically gifted as well. I can see them having a lot of possession in this game. I'm actually going for Mexico to win to 0 here. Okay, game preview 3, one that I know Matt is looking forward to as well. Israel against Scotland. Now, these two must be sick of the sight of each other. I think it's 6 times in 2.5 years they played each other. Now, you played for Scotland 18 times, 1 goal.
I did.
Good goal. Crucial goal.
You're emphasising that goal, aren't you?
Go on, tell us a little bit about it.
I was just, as you say, my solo goal at international level. Very proud of it.
So you should be.
Yeah, exactly. And it was much needed as well. It was against the mighty San Marino, who England faced this week. But we were away in San Marino, and I don't remember, it was about 55, 58 minutes on the clock, and it was still 0-0. It was much needed, trust me.
Were you all feeling the pressure?
Yeah, you could sense it. Fans were allowed in then, and there was a decent contingent of the Tartan Army there, and you could sense the restlessness, shall we say, from them, and just within the group of players. And we were sort of already, even at that relatively early stage, looking at the clock and thinking, we need a result here. Like, we need a goal, sharpish. Thankfully, I just trundled up front. There was a set piece, and the ball was flighted in, and the keeper just came flying out of nowhere, miles underneath it. I just nodded it in from about 15 yards, but it was an empty net. Just looped it in. Big relief, and we went on to win it 2-0, so we got away with too much criticism. But cut me short there because I'm rambling on about my career.
No. Listen, to play for your country, to score for your country, doesn't matter who it's against, is a very, very proud achievement. And talking about pride as well, how proud are you of Scotland finally reaching a major tournament?
Yeah, it's great stuff, long overdue, as has been regularly mentioned. The last time was nothing to do with me, in fact, but when I was actually involved in the squad, I went to the 98 World Cup.
Yes.
By the time I'd made my debut, the team had already qualified, so I'm not taking any credit for that. But that was a wonderful experience for me. But 98, it tells it all, doesn't it? There's been a few heartbreaking, close misses, if you like, previously. But heartache is normally the theme
for
Scotland. I think the way they got through in the playoffs through the penalty shootout and the drama of it all and the unexpectedness of it, in truth, to go away like they did and get that result was brilliant stuff, wasn't it? Albeit no supporters, which was, again...
Probably did them a favour.
Yeah.
Serbia.
Well, maybe, yeah, possibly. But we won't go there, maybe.
No,
but it was, it was brilliant news. Long overdue.
Yeah. So who are you most looking forward to watching here? I mean, Che Adams has been called up for the first time, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because he's been a little bit of a slow burner in terms of his development, but when he finds his level or his confidence at a certain level, we talked about it earlier in the show about being a handful. He is that, but he's got technical ability as well. He's a powerful boy. But I think he'll bring some much needed sort of spice to Scotland's front line, really. A little bit of directness. They've got capable players, not internationally renowned, but Che Adams, listen, it's early days for him, but there's a great opportunity for him there, and he's obviously one to watch, yeah.
The only thing about this game is that Israel will want revenge, won't they?
Well, yeah, they will. It was Scotland's gain was Israel's pain, I suppose. I like Che Adams. I think he's definitely better than what Scotland have got up front at the moment. I mean, Dykes has done a really good job for the team, but he hasn't been playing that well for QPR, and sort of not. I think since Charlie Austin went there, Charlie Austin sort of taken over that sort of striking role at Rangers, and so you need somebody up front because the midfield is good, isn't it? It's talented, and there's some technical ability with players like McGinn in there, but I think to get anywhere at sort of the international level, you need somebody to score goals because it puts too much pressure on the defence. And so if you've got a chance of a goal scorer, and Che Adams, I think he does play in streaks, but in a tournament, you only need him to get hot for 2 weeks, and it might be enough to, to take you quite far. How Robson-Kanu did it for Wales against, Belgium, and what an unbelievable goal that was. And so you just need somebody that can do something, and I think he offers them sort of aspects of their play that they haven't got, ordinarily in that squad. So I think it's a good pickup.
Got to ask you before we get your prediction, how do you think Scotland will do in the Euros?
I think it'll be tough. To be fair. I think they'll probably refute it, but such is the sort of celebration and jubilation of just getting to the tournament itself, being part of it, the Tartan Army. Hopefully we'll be able to play a part to some degree. Yeah. And it's about partaking and involvement primarily.
That England game would be more than that though, wouldn't it?
Well, that's a different level, yeah. I mean, they're not expecting, let's be realistic, they're not expecting to go and pull up any trees, or get into sort of latter stages of the competition. But yeah, there's some big old games that they'll be fired up for, that's for sure. And England, Scotland, we all know.
Doesn't get bigger. Doesn't get
exactly.
Bigger.
We all know what that brings.
Yeah.
And listen, if they were to get a result against England, to whatever level, they'd be dining out for decades, never mind years, won't they?
Okay, so let's bring it back round to this Israel game then. What's your Betfred selection for this one?
I've gone for, I'm struggling to actually remember,
Well, while you're thinking, Mark, tell us yours.
I've gone for under 1.5 goals in this game. They've met 3 times in 2020, and none of them were particularly good games. 2 of them were under 1.5. So Harvey up front for Israel is their biggest threat of a goal, and Scotland don't score many.
No, I've gone. When these two meet, there's rarely a lot of goals. I'm with you. 1 goal in this for me. I hope Scotland's qualified, but for me, I think Israel will want revenge and get the only goal of the game. So I'm going for a 1-0 Israel win.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna back Scotland
as a shock
to a degree. Yeah, with because all these 1.5 goals and 2, it confuses me a little. If I'm honest, still haven't got my head around that. But I'm going for Israel to be winning at half time and Scotland to draw.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Good comeback. I think Scotland will probably take that. Okay, let's move it on to Sunday. Game preview 4, another World Cup qualifiers. Albania against England. And Matt, I'm assuming England are fit 5+ past San Marino. As we speak, we don't know. But with games against them, Albania and Poland, what does Gareth Southgate do? What do you feel he should do? Should he try and experiment and with what he's got? Because probably going to win anyway, though the Poland game should be a decent game. Or really try to bed down with the players he can possibly have right now, a plan A ahead of what the Euros are. It's only a couple of months away now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a weird scenario, isn't it? The whole atmosphere, really, like you say, playing World Cup qualifiers prior to a European Championship, etc. But you've got to get their heads around that. But with the 3 games in quick succession, I suppose the obvious plan you would imagine is put down something there or thereabouts against San Marino. It might be an opportunity to perhaps examine or look at a few different ways of going forward and maybe a tweak in the system. Although I think initially he'll stick with what he's intending to start the Euros with, there or thereabouts. He's going to mix it up at the weekend, you would think, against Albania, just in terms of personnel, 3 games in quick succession. It makes sense. And then the stronger team against Poland, back again, reverting to that.
So what about if Harry Kane comes up to him and says, look, this is a great opportunity for me to score as many goals as possible in a week's time? We know what Jose Mourinho has already said about, we hope they'll talk and have a bit of sense about not playing every game. Fantastic opportunity for Harry Kane. He'll want to play them all, but can he, should he?
Yeah, but everyone wants to play as well, don't they? They can all go up to Gareth Southgate and say, look, there's a chance for me. I know what you're saying.
But should he?
Kane's standing within the club, within the squad. People think he can sort of dictate a little bit. But No, I don't see Kane starting 3 games on the trot just because it's opportunity to get goals, do you?
No, I agree with you, but he won't be happy with you, and I think he's going to be on the phone to you quite shortly about that. No, I'm
Well,
Mark, I mean, the Poland game should be a decent one. Come up against Robert Lewandowski and that. But what do you feel the plan is this week for Gareth Southgate?
I think it's probably more the training, I would imagine, just being able to see the players and work on things. Because I mean, against the training sessions will be harder than playing against San Marino, really. I mean, so you're not going to learn anything. You put somebody in like Ollie Watkins and he scores goals. Doesn't mean he's going to score goals come the European Championship. So he probably wants to see him up against in training against the 2 England centre backs, or against Stones and Maguire, and see what he can do there, and see how he links up with Sterling and Sancho and Rashford and players like that. So. I think it's more about the training. The Poland game is important, of course, right at the end of it. So it will be about peaking for that game, I imagine, because you should be able to win the first 2 matches without testing yourself too much. And I think it would be wrong to play any player in all 3 games. And if any player is putting pressure on, Southgate should be strong enough to bat that away.
A lot of people will be thinking this should be a cricket score. Should it be?
Well, France only won 2-0 away to Albania, and Turkey won 2-0 away to Albania in the Euro qualifiers. So apart from the real minnows, it feels like once you get the job done to a certain level, there's no need, and particularly with the players feeling a bit of tiredness anyway, there's no need to push yourself beyond, once the result's in the bag. Just look after, professional performance and all of those cliches that come in. As far as Albania go, their coach, Eddie Rea, is very experienced, Italian guy that's managed Napoli, Lazio, Atalanta. I think he'll be good enough to protect them as well, to make sure it's not an embarrassment. And like I say, the fact they were only beaten a couple of goals by France suggests that, England are not as good as France, let's put it that way.
Matt, before we get your Betfred selection, how good do you feel England are, and how do you feel we'll do in the Euros? I mean, I take it being Scotland, you won't want us to win, but no. You obviously you want England to do well as well, I'm sure. But how do you feel we can do? Go all the way?
I think the possibility is there. Yeah, with it being, the likelihood of it being predominantly, if not all, in this country, there's every chance. We all know you can hark back to '96 and you saw the effect that home effect has. And listen, England have got players that are, right throughout the squad, and Mark's just mentioned a few there. They just rolled off the tongue. There's a few more, a good few more that you could drop in there as well, who are performing at the highest level, really. And English clubs are doing exceptionally well in European football. Okay, there's more than a sprinkling of European players in there, but they're not fazed by it now, really. I think there used to be a time when Scottish footballers definitely, and English footballers, would come up against the big teams, and there was almost a sense of, not fear maybe, but they were almost a little bit in awe of the top teams, because it was almost sort of mythical, wasn't it? How good they were.
Yeah, but now they're playing against them regularly in European competition.
Even the South Americans, they come here and you experience that they're not these godlike creatures all of a sudden, and they're very good players, obviously. But you can compete against them, and they come into it raw, and from a young age they experience it now as well, international level. So they're playing on at least a level playing field in terms of attitude.
So we're going to win the tournament, is that what you're saying?
Well, do I think they'll win it? I think they'll go close.
Yeah,
I think they'll go close.
I do as well.
I think if you look at, I think it's the coaches that have come into the top clubs now. So Guardiola, Phil Foden is working with Guardiola every day. I mean, that has to be of benefit to him. Jurgen Klopp is at Liverpool, Brendan Rodgers at Leicester. Okay, Mourinho's having a bit of a tough time at the moment, but I mean, he still would be highly regarded as a coach. And before that, the Tottenham lot were working under Pochettino. There's some real big. You look at like the bottom half of that league: Bielsa, Nuno, I think Hasenhüttl at Southampton's a really good coach as well. So the strength in depth, I think, of the coaching in the Premier League is really helping the national team.
Okay, we've digressed a little bit, but I think it's really interesting, how far England can go. So what's your Betfred selection for this particular game in Albania, England?
Yeah, I'm going to go, again, keeping it relatively basic because it confuses.
Keep it simple.
Simple but effective. Eh?
Yeah.
But I'm going for, it might be a little bit of a surprise, a draw at half-time and England to win by 2 clear goals.
Are you feeling that pressure that England did against Scotland did against San Marino?
Well, yeah, reminiscent of that. But I can just picture the Albanians being really up for it initially and giving it a real good go. And even without the supporter situation as it is, I still think they'll be pretty feisty, and it's a huge game for them, isn't it? How many times do they get this opportunity against all these Premier League superstars that they see, and they'll be giving it their all, and eventually they'll fail.
And the country where Norman Wisdom came from as well, but he's so popular. Who are you going for?
I'm going for England to win 2-0, just like France and Turkey did in Euro qualifying.
Okay, I actually think, and it's interesting, about other countries have not gone there and thrashed Albania. I'm not saying England will thrash them, but I think even -3, they'll go on to win the game. So I think a more than comfortable win for England here. Okay, game preview 5, final one. It's on Sunday. It's a friendly. Northern Ireland against the USA. Now, Northern Ireland have World Cup qualifiers against Italy and Bulgaria either side of this game. So like we spoke about Wales earlier, do you feel that Ian Barraclough will perhaps play a second string and make lots of rotation here?
Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? I think that would be the case, not just for Wales and Northern Ireland, but like England as well, that we said there. That middle game is going to be, there's a little bit of tweaking and adjusting, isn't it, there? And you give certain players a rest, etc., a chance to experiment maybe. But I think that will be the case at the weekend. And it's going to be difficult whatever team I think he puts out against America, who are progressing, and all of a sudden they're getting a bit of a squad together, aren't they?
They are. They've got some very good individuals. I mean, Northern Ireland's in a really tough group, along with Italy, there's Switzerland too. The Bulgaria game at home is going to be crucial. But in terms of this one, I'm disappointed Connor Washington isn't fit to actually play, but chance to perhaps try out the potential debutant of Dion Charles and others as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the game to do it in. I mean, the Italian game first up, we're speaking before we know the result of that, but you can picture that being a difficult 90 minutes. And even if Northern Ireland gets something out of it, they're not going to have much possession and it's going to be hard work. So I'd expect heavy rotation before what is an absolute must-win game against Bulgaria. I've just felt, and they actually did quite well to get as far as they did in the Euros, but I felt like before that, Michael O'Neill was getting absolutely everything and a little bit more out of that squad, and I'm just not sure how much more there is to come. It was a difficult job to take over from Ian Barraclough. Yeah. He did better than I thought he would initially, but I still take the long-term view that I look at that list of players and I think it's going to be very difficult to get them back to where Michael O'Neill did.
And as Matt says, the US have some good players, don't they?
Really good. I mean, Pulisic's been a little bit quiet, hasn't he, for Chelsea? But, I mean, he's the undoubted sort of golden boy, this new Stars and Stripes generation. But Dest scored a couple of goals for Barcelona. Stefan is Man City's number 2 and hasn't let the team down when he's been involved. Gio Reyna, son of Claudio, has been making waves for Borussia Dortmund as well. There was a time when I think they were just producing like goalkeepers seem to be a big thing in Friedel and Casey Keller and players like that sort of led the way. They've been desperate to find somebody that can play in the top end of the pitch and be a real superstar. They're hoping it's Pulisic. He's just gone a little bit quiet at Chelsea, but I still think the form he showed at the back end of last year suggests that he could be, that golden boy for them. Okay,
Betfred selection for this one then. Northern Ireland against the
USA. Unfortunately for Ireland, I'm going for a semi-convincing win for the Americans there. Just mulling over whether it's 2 or 3-0. Let's be conservative. 2-0 to America.
Okay, Mark?
I'll just go for the US to win.
Yeah, I'm going for the Americans to win 2-0. I It's going to be a really tough game for Northern Ireland.
Probably a better bit, yeah. Leave it open.
We'll see. Okay, let's move it on now to, we'll call this who was unlucky not to be called up in the England squad. You know, one obvious one. Another one perhaps was between him and another striker as well. But who have you gone for, Matt, with the England squad? Gareth Southgate, he's a man of his convictions, isn't he? And even if you've done it for him, if you're not doing it at club level, he won't pick you.
The majority of the time, yeah. I think, for me, if you set sort of parameters there sometimes and you stick, or you intend to stick steadfastly to them, sometimes it can backfire because each scenario, each situation, each individual is different. And I think in the case, we're referring to Trent AlexanderArnold, in particular, who's been omitted from the squad. I think rightly so.
Do you?
Yeah, I do, because I think it's a little bit simplistic to say, listen, he's a world-class talent, which undoubtedly he is in terms of his footballing ability. But the way he's been applying himself, he's been off his game. And I've heard different people mention it, and I've noticed it myself in the few times that I've seen Liverpool of late. He's sloppy defensively, and the edge has gone off his game. He's not getting up tight and close enough. It's too easy for opponents to get at him and cause problems, and he's a little bit slack in his positioning, when if he's properly focused and switched on, he doesn't do. And we know about his ability going forward. And I went to an Anfield game a couple of years ago, Leicester, Liverpool, and bumped into the Jan Mulby, of all people, not name dropping here, but we know how good a player he was, right? He's a great lad as well, as it happens. And I was surprised he recognised me, but we had a bit of a chat anyway. And but he said to me, every week I watch this lad, and he says he makes me go, wow, at least twice a game. That's Jan Mulby, and I'm thinking, right, so I had a proper look out at Alexander-Arnold, and I could see why. And he's an incredible talent, probably the most talented out of all England's right backs. But his time will come again, but I think it's a little bit of a...
So if he doesn't if he carries on this form, do you see him not even going to the Euros, or is this almost a bit of a kick up the backside?
I think he'll go, but he's got to improve his performances. Obviously, Gareth's done his homework. He's had a little look at him in depth. He wouldn't have made that decision lightly, but I'm sure there was an element of, come on, just pick yourself up a bit. And there's still enough time, even though it's quite close. The Euros, there's time for him to get back in the squad. And, by rights, if everyone's playing on top of the game, he starts probably. Him, I don't know, I was going to say Walker, but then Trippier comes into your mind, doesn't it?
Well, Reece James comes into my mind. I think he's more of an all-rounded right back.
Yeah,
but,
that's for all of them. But for me, Alexander-Arnold is, and it doesn't always boil down to that, he's the most naturally talented, I think, in that position that England have got.
Even at the top of his game, he worries me defensively in this sort of quarter-final, semi-finals, final of a major tournament. Who have you gone for, Mark?
I'll go for Bamford, because you look at, it's not football and striking is not only about scoring goals, but only Fernandes, who's on penalties at Manchester United, Salah at Liverpool, and Kane at Tottenham scored more than him in the Premier League this season. I think he could quite rightly look and say, well, I do a lot of what Watkins does anyway, and I'm scoring more goals at a similar level team. So I also think that the way that Bielsa plays, I see that transferring more to the international stage with the one touch and the movement of some of them other forwards like Sterling and Sancho and Rashford, maybe more than Watkins, who works really hard, works the channels and makes constant runs in behind. You don't get to do that much at international football, those type of runs. And so...
what about even pressing from the front, which I suppose Patrick Bamford does as well?
Yeah, but Bamford, Watkins does do that a lot. In international football, in tournaments, particularly in the summer, you don't see, and most teams just retreat because the players haven't got it in their legs to be able to do it, and it's no good Watkins charging off if the people behind him are not doing it. So I mean, most international teams now just drop back into their shape because it's just too difficult, and they haven't got the legs to be able to do that after a long, hard season, particularly after a season in a pandemic. So I think Bamford's really unlucky. Might just be that the all-round game of Watkins has just edged it, but yeah, I'm not so sure.
Okay, it must have been almost a toss of a coin between the two. Let's go on to our team treble then, shall we? We pick a team, or country maybe, that we think is going to win. 7-1 this week. Who have you gone for, Matt?
I've gone back to our first discussion, or first game of discussion, with Republic of Ireland versus Luxembourg. Ireland to win. Maybe not as convincingly as I've put in
They still might.
my bets, but I fancy them to sneak a victory now. You've taught me, you make me feel demoralised now, you two, but they're my part of the treble. I'm sticking by them.
So it was a Cheltenham festival last week. There might well be another Cheltenham festival come the end of the season, because in League Two, Cheltenham absolutely flying at the moment, going really well under Michael Duff. I think it's a coach that's definitely going places. They're unlucky last year. They've got a brilliant away record. They've won 8 of their last 11 matches as well in League Two. They've beaten some good sides. Cambridge are right up there. They beat them. They beat Exeter. They beat Salford. They take on a Morecambe team. Derek Adams is getting the absolute maximum out of them. He's a bit of a quirky and odd character, I think, but he's certainly doing a good job at Morecambe. But they've lost. Every time they've played a team in the top 7 at home so far, they've lost. I expect that run to continue.
Okay, just mentioning Cheltenham there, reminded me actually, I remember the time I saw you one time. I was at West Ham, you were at Leicester. It was towards the end of the day,
Correct.
So we were having a laugh. I jumped in your back, you gave me a piggyback for about half an hour.
That's right, do you know what? That's just come back to me now.
Yeah, I just
Were you with Neil Ruddock?
Yeah.
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 He was all suited and booted, wasn't he?
It wouldn't have lasted long, I'm sure.
All the gear on, yeah, the good days.
Anyway, yeah,
weren't they?
really good days, really good days. We'll get back to Cheltenham one day, I'm sure. Anyway, I digress. Again, I've gone for Norway to beat Turkey. I think 2 words here, Erling Haaland. Outstanding player. There's also Martin Odegaard as well. I think between the 2 of those, there'll be enough goals to see off Turkey. So Norway for me, 7-1 this week. Matt, that's it. You enjoyed it?
Yeah, lovely. Spot on.
Good to see you after all these years.
I know, not often enough, is it? But it literally is after all these years. As you mentioned there about Cheltenham, the odd fleeting moment in between,
Yes.
but where's it all gone? 30 odd years ago.
Once we're allowed out again, let's meet up. And
I'm
have
up for that. Any invitation,
good
more than
session.
welcome.
Okay, that's it for this week's Different League show, sponsored by Betfred. Hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have. Seeing Matt again. We're back next week where, of course, the Premier League will come back. We'll look at some of those games, the top games coming up, and look back to see how well Matt did and if Republic of Ireland did win by 3 goals or more. Of course, as ever, I always say it, but totally mean it. If you are going to bet, please bet responsibly. Bye for now.